Who cheated first? Two betrayers and one unexpected twist. You won't believe how it ended. Whose perfume is on your shirt, John? Sarah held up the shirt as if it were something dirty. Her voice was calm, but her eyes betrayed a storm of emotions. John froze in the doorway, caught as if red-handed. He had just returned home from what he claimed was a late meeting with colleagues. But the scent, sweet and bold, unmistakably not hers, hit Sarah like undeniable proof. It means nothing, Sarah, John said, avoiding her eyes. Nothing? Then explain why that scent is on your shirt but not on my skin. His silence stung more than the worst confession. He averted her gaze, but every action only added fuel to the fire. I can explain, he stammered. It must be from someone at the office. Jessica walked by, and maybe it lingered. Sarah laughed, a sharp, cold laugh devoid of any humor. Jessica, huh? I wonder if she even knows she left her mark. John said nothing, and her hands trembled with anger. Then, as if cutting the moment in half, Sarah said, You know what, John? I'm not innocent either. Maybe that'll interest you. Her words hit him harder than any accusation. What do you mean? His voice was hollow. Exactly what I said. I have my secrets too. Guess who he is? Her eyes radiated a daring confidence he had never seen before. She didn't wait for his reply. Turning sharply, she walked to the bedroom, leaving him standing there in shock. John leaned against the table in the living room, his mind spinning. What did she mean? And who sent her that message? Her last words played over and over in his head, eroding his confidence. Sarah closed the bedroom door behind her and leaned against the wall. Her phone screen still glowed with a message. I'm waiting for you. Don't make me wait too long, she sighed, swiped the screen to close it, and walked to the window. Her fingers nervously brushed the curtain as if debating whether to reply. Instead, she dialed another number. Hi, I need your help. It's about John, Sarah said, her voice steady despite her efforts. From the other end came a response. Are you sure you want to do this? Yes. He thinks he can play games with me. But he doesn't know who I really am, she replied, her voice resolute. John, standing near the bedroom door, caught fragments of the conversation. The words help and John made him uneasy. He crept closer, straining to hear. But Sarah abruptly fell silent. She knew he was there. John, you might as well come in if you have something to say, she called out, her back still to him. His heart raced. He pushed the door open and stepped inside. Sarah, what's going on? Who sent you that message? She turned to him, arms crossed. Her face was calm, but her eyes revealed she was calculating every word. Do you really want to know? Because I'm ready to tell you. But you have to promise to be honest with me in return. John tensed. He knew lying further would be risky, but the truth could destroy everything. I'm ready. Just tell me. Sarah stepped closer, holding her phone out for him to see. The screen displayed the message. It's from a friend. We've been seeing each other for a month. And yes, John, that's exactly what I mean. I cheated too. John was stunned. His mouth opened, but no words came out. She continued. I did it because I felt something was off. You come home late, dodge questions, and avoid me. I suspected you were cheating, and I decided I wouldn't play the victim anymore. John wanted to object, but her words were too precise. Sarah, I didn't. She raised her hand, stopping him. Wait, let me finish. I know about Jessica. I saw your messages a week ago but said nothing because I wanted to see if you'd be brave enough to confess. And you know what? You didn't. John began pacing the room nervously, searching for a way to justify himself. But only fragments of past events, now seeming trivial, swirled in his mind. It's not what you think, he finally said. Oh, really? Then explain what it is. Or better yet, ask her why she sent me photos of the two of you together. Her voice sharpened. John sat at a cafe table, gripping his phone. Jessica's number was already dialed, but he hesitated to press the call button. The photo Sarah had shown him left no room for doubt. Jessica had deliberately handed over the evidence. But why? What was she trying to achieve? Finally, he tapped the screen. The call rang twice before Jessica answered. John? Her voice was cautious. We need to talk. And that's not a request, he said firmly. Jessica sighed. Fine. Meet me at the park in an hour. Don't call again. John arrived early at the meeting spot. He sat on a bench by the lake, tension building inside him. A few minutes later, he saw Jessica approaching. She looked calm, even confident, as always. So, what's this about? She began, sitting beside him. Don't play dumb. You sent Sarah the photo of us. Why? Jessica smirked slightly. Do you really think it's that simple? John, you were nothing more than entertainment for me. And now you've stopped being interesting. His face flushed with anger. Entertainment? You said there was something real between us. Real? You're the one who believed that. But you know what's real? The way your wife reached out to me. John felt the blood drain from his face. What did you say? Sarah knew about us before I said anything. She contacted me and offered a deal. I give her the evidence, and she gives me what I want. And what did you want? Jessica looked at him boldly. Your boss, Charles. Sarah knows how much I wanted that position and used it against me. John couldn't believe what he was hearing. His wife had been orchestrating everything, playing both sides to her advantage. You helped her, and now you're telling me all this? Why? Jessica leaned closer, her eyes gleaming with danger. Because now it's your turn to make a choice. You either keep your mouth shut, or I tell Charles how you used company resources to cover for our meetings. John felt the ground shift beneath him. Jessica had cornered him. You're leaving me no choice, he whispered, barely containing his anger. Exactly, John. Choice is a luxury you've lost. John stood at the doorway, stunned by Sarah's words. Her smile was smug, and her eyes radiated an undeniable sense of victory. She swirled her wine glass lightly, as if this were just another pleasant conversation. What's this game, Sarah? He finally managed, struggling to keep his voice steady. Sarah took a slow sip of wine, glancing at John through her lashes. It's a game where I make the rules, and you play by them. Though, perhaps you've already lost. John clenched his fists. He had always thought of himself as strong, but now he felt he had completely lost control of the situation. What do you want from me? His voice grew harsher. Sarah stood up, moved closer, and touched his chest with her finger. I want you to understand what it feels like to be betrayed, and to see that you're not the only one who knows how to play this game. John looked into her eyes. His heart was pounding. He felt she wasn't just trying to humiliate him. This was part of something bigger, more calculated. And what's next? Are you just going to enjoy watching me fall apart? Sarah laughed. Her laugh was quiet, but full of disdain. Oh, John, I already did that long ago. But now I have an offer you can't refuse. She turned, took a few steps toward the couch, and gestured for him to sit. I'm listening, he said, trying to maintain a calm exterior. Sarah sat beside him and leaned in. Her perfume, sweet and slightly provocative, filled the space between them. I know Jessica is trying to get rid of you. But guess what? I can help you stay afloat. Help? How exactly? Sarah smiled. I have something on her. Something that will make her back off. But it's not free, John. You'll have to do me a favor. What kind of favor? She paused, looking directly into his eyes. You'll be my husband, but under new rules. From now on, you'll do everything I say. No questions, no refusals. John shook his head. You want me to be your slave? That's insane. Sarah tilted her head, her eyes turning serious. No, John. This is your chance to save what you have left. Either you accept it, or prepare to lose everything. Your job, your reputation, me. Although, honestly, you've already lost me. His chest heaved as anger and despair battled within him. But Sarah held all the cards now. And what do you want now? He asked after a pause. Sarah stood up, her posture graceful and commanding. First, you'll cut off all contact with Jessica. And you'll give me access to your work emails. I want to make sure there are no other secrets. John laughed nervously. Are you serious? Absolutely, she replied, looking him straight in the eye. I want to know if there's anything else you're hiding. John lowered his head. He had no choice. Fine, he whispered. Sarah smiled and returned to her glass of wine. Good. Now let's have dinner. We've got a lot to do. John sat in his office, holding his phone to his ear. When Jessica's voice answered, he felt both relief and anxiety. "What do you want?" Her voice was cold, almost detached. "You need to explain. Your message. What do you mean when you say this isn't over?" Jessica was silent for a few seconds. John imagined her weighing her response, deciding whether to speak at all. "Sarah thinks she's in control. But you have no idea how many skeletons she has in her closet. She's playing you, John, just like she played others before you." John tried to mask his surprise. "What do you mean?" Jessica laughed quietly. "Meet me at the same park. You want to know the truth? I'll tell you everything. But be ready, you're not going to like it." John arrived at the park early. The cold wind slapped his face, but he didn't feel it. He was consumed by anticipation. A few minutes later, he saw Jessica approaching the bench. She was wearing a dark coat. Her eyes were cold, but her movements betrayed tension. "So, are you ready?" she asked, sitting down beside him. John nodded. Jessica pulled a small tablet out of her bag. She opened a folder of files and showed him a few photos. "Do you know this man?" she asked, showing an image of Sarah in the arms of another man. John felt his breath catch. "This? Who is this?" "This is Ethan, her former colleague. They were together back when you and Sarah had just gotten married. And you know what's interesting? Not only did she cheat on you with him, but she also used him to get information about you." John closed his eyes, feeling his world begin to crumble. "What are you talking about?" Jessica leaned in closer, her voice lowering but becoming more intense. "Sarah didn't just know everything by chance. She always knew how to manipulate the situation. She uses people to achieve her goals. Do you think it's just you and Jessica? No. Her game started long before you realized it." John felt anger rising within him. "Why are you telling me this? What are you trying to prove?" Jessica leaned back on the bench and smiled. "Because I want you to see who she really is. And also because I know how you can fix this. We can team up, John. You and me. Against her." His eyes narrowed. "And what do you get out of this?" "Freedom," she answered quickly. "I want to end this game, but I need your help. I can't do it without you." John thought for a moment. He knew Jessica was playing her own game, but her words aligned with what he had already suspected. "Fine. What do you propose?" Jessica leaned in closer. "I'll give you access to all her secrets. You'll see the emails, contracts, messages. But in return, you'll help me destroy her plan. It's the only way you can free yourself." John sat in his bedroom, staring at his phone. On the screen was a file of messages Jessica had sent him. Every word unsettled him. Sarah hadn't just been playing with him. She had done it coldly and methodically, planning every step. But there was one detail that wouldn't let him rest. A name kept appearing in the messages between Sarah and her contact, Max. John didn't know anyone named Max, but judging by their conversations, he was a key figure in her plans. The phone buzzed, snapping John out of his stupor. A new message from an unknown number. "Sarah and Jessica think they're playing against each other. But they'll both answer to me. And so will you, John. Be ready." His heart stopped. Who was this? Max? A third player manipulating everyone? A few hours later, John received another message. "Meet me tomorrow at 8 at the motel outside the city. We'll talk. Come alone." John arrived at the location an hour early. The small, run-down motel with dim lighting looked like nothing good had happened there in a long time. His heart was racing faster than usual. He felt like this moment could change everything. Max arrived on time. He was a man in a black suit, with sharp features and a cold gaze. He looked like someone who always got what he wanted. "John, glad you came. We have a lot to talk about." John tensed. "Who are you, and what do you want?" Max smiled. "My name is Max, and I'm the one holding your lives in my hands. Sarah, Jessica, they were both playing, but they were playing on my field." John clenched his fists. "What do you mean?" Max pulled out a tablet and placed it on the table between them. Videos appeared on the screen. Sarah was in them, sitting in the same motel, but with another man. "This was a few months ago," Max said. "Sarah was working with me to take down Jessica, but she didn't know I was recording everything." John couldn't believe his eyes. "Why are you showing me this?" Max leaned in closer. Because now you're part of the game, and I want you to help me. Sarah thinks she's controlling you, and Jessica thinks she's manipulating the situation. But they're both making mistakes. You can help me expose who they really are. John stared at the screen, his anger mixing with fear. What are you proposing? Max smirked. I want you to keep playing along with both Sarah and Jessica, but secretly, you'll be working for me. Together, we'll destroy their game. And what's in it for me? Max raised his gaze. Freedom. I'll let you go and make sure neither Sarah nor Jessica can harm you. But if you refuse, well, you understand that I know more than I should. John sat in his car outside the house, rereading Max's messages. His head was spinning with thoughts. Work with the man who had ruined his marriage, shattered trust, and turned everything into chaos? But what choice did he have? When he walked into the house, Sarah was already waiting. She was sitting in an armchair, her face serious, with a glass of wine on the table beside her. "How was your day, darling?" she asked softly, but her voice carried a faint mocking tone. John ignored the question. "Who is Max?" His voice was quiet, but filled with tension. Sarah raised her eyebrows, as if surprised he knew the name. "Max? Just someone I worked with for a while. Why do you ask?" "Don't play games with me, Sarah. I know he's got you on a leash. Just like Jessica. Just like me." Sarah leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "What do you know about Max, John?" He stepped closer, feeling his anger boil over. "He told me you've played this game before. That you used me, just like you've used others. That this is all part of your scheme. Is it true?" Sarah paused for a moment. Then she slowly stood, her face expressionless. "Fine. You want the truth? I'll tell you. Yes, I worked with Max. But not because I wanted to destroy you. I wanted to save myself." John clenched his fists. "From what? From who?" Sarah walked to the window, staring into the darkness. "From him. Max isn't just a man, John. He's a monster. I got involved in his business years ago, and he won't let me go. He made me betray you. He made me destroy people I cared about. I did it to survive." John couldn't believe her words. "You're lying. You've always lied." Sarah turned around, and for the first time, tears filled her eyes. "I wasn't lying when I said I loved you. But you have no idea what he's capable of. If I don't obey, he'll destroy everything, John. Everything I've built." John felt his anger mixing with sympathy. But before he could respond, their conversation was interrupted by the sharp ping of a message on his phone. "Have you made your choice? Sarah knows I'm here. Time to play by my rules, John." John looked up. Sarah already knew who had sent the message. "It's him, isn't it?" she asked. "What do you propose, Sarah? What can we do?" She looked at him, and in her gaze was something he hadn't seen in a long time. Determination. "I know how to stop him, but it's dangerous. You have to trust me, even if it all seems insane." John took a deep breath, looking into Sarah's eyes. Her gaze radiated resolve, but there was also something dark, almost imperceptible. He knew trusting her was like stepping into an abyss, but did he have a choice? "I'm with you," he finally said, his voice betraying both fear and hope. Sarah gave a brief, almost imperceptible nod. "All right, then listen carefully. We need to act quickly. Max doesn't tolerate delays. But before we start, I want you to tell me the truth. Are you still on Jessica's side?" John noticed how her voice hardened, her eyes narrowing as if trying to peer into his very soul. "No," he replied after a pause, forcing himself not to look away. "I'm with you. But tell me one thing. Do you really want to stop Max, or is this just another one of your games?" Sarah took a step back, her face shadowed. "Maybe it is a game, John, but you're already in it, and there's no way out." That night, John pored over the files Jessica had sent him. Among the endless messages and documents were several letters Sarah had apparently written to Max. They were signed with the initials SL, and every word spoke of a closeness John hadn't expected. "I've done what you asked. John knows nothing. Now it's your turn to keep your promise. SL." He clenched his phone in his hand, feeling rage welling up inside him. She had lied. She had played a game where he was nothing more than a pawn. But Jessica was no better. Her last message was clear and almost cruel. Do you think Sarah's on your side? Let me remind you, she always plays for herself. If you want to survive, work with me. John decided it was time to take a risk. The next day, he invited Jessica to meet. They gathered in her apartment, which was sterile and cold, like an office. She sat at a desk, carefully studying John. "What do you want, John?" she asked, her voice even but with a hint of curiosity. "I'm ready to work with you, but you need to give me more. I don't trust Sarah, but you're not exactly convincing either." Jessica smiled, a glint appearing in her eyes. "Smart choice. All right, I'll tell you more. But you need to know it's dangerous. Max isn't just a player. He controls everything. And if you make one wrong move, we'll both be dead." John gritted his teeth. "What do you know about Sarah and Max?" Jessica leaned in closer. "Sarah's been working for him for a long time, but not because she wants to. He forced her. He has leverage over her that she fears more than death. But here's something more interesting. Max isn't just using Sarah. He plans to get rid of her as soon as she's no longer useful." John felt his breath catch. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want to destroy him. And Sarah will just be a tool for that. She betrayed you, John. But she's not the monster. The monster is Max." John knew he was now walking a razor's edge. Working with Jessica meant diving even deeper into a game he still didn't fully understand. But Sarah had always been by his side, even though she had turned their life into a maze of lies. Now he had to play on two fronts, balancing their trust and his own fears. Returning home after meeting with Jessica, John found Sarah in the kitchen. She was slicing a lemon, her movements sharp and precise, as if she was venting her anger on the innocent fruit. "Where were you?" she asked without even looking at him. John knew lying was his only option. "At the office. There were a few urgent matters." Sarah looked up at him. Her eyes were so cold they seemed to cut right through him. "At the office, you say? And what's this?" She placed a tablet on the table with a photo of his meeting with Jessica. John felt his heart stop. "Sarah, it's not what you think." "Not what I think?" she interrupted, laughing a cold, sharp laugh. "You're meeting with the one who's betraying us, and you're saying it means nothing." John stepped back, trying to buy time to explain. "She wanted to talk. About Max. She said he has leverage on you." Sarah froze, her hand with the knife suspended in the air. "Leverage? What exactly did she tell you?" John felt the situation slipping out of his control. "That you're working for him because he has something on you." "That you?" Sarah threw the knife onto the table and approached him. "And you believed her? You believe that snake?" John tried to keep his composure. "Why should I believe you, Sarah? You've been lying to me this whole time. You made me feel guilty while you were playing your own games." Her expression changed. The anger gave way to pain. "I lied because I was trying to protect you, John. You don't even understand how dangerous Max is. If you go against him, even once, he'll destroy both of us." John tried to change the subject, but her words wouldn't leave his mind. "So what do you propose? Just sit and wait for him to take everything we care about?" Sarah stepped closer to him, her voice quieter but filled with emotion. "I propose we act together. But if you keep meeting with Jessica, I won't be able to trust you anymore." That same evening, John received a message from Jessica. "Meeting tomorrow. Bring the documents I asked for. They'll decide everything." John knew he was taking a risk, but he also understood that without Jessica, he wouldn't uncover the truth about Max. The next day, they met at an abandoned warehouse. Jessica was already there, nervously tapping her fingers on the table. "You're late," she said without looking at him. "I'm here. What do you want to know?" Jessica looked up at him. "Max is playing on multiple fronts. He's using Sarah to gain access to your work projects. You don't even realize he's already stealing information from your company." John froze. "What do you mean?" She pulled out a laptop and showed him several files. "These are logs from your servers. The data is being funneled into offshore accounts. Now guess who signed these documents?" John saw the initials JD, his own. "This is impossible." "It's entirely possible, John. You have no idea how much control Max has over your life." John stood before Sarah in tense silence. Her words echoed in his mind like shockwaves. "Who will you choose? Me or her?" He felt a burning rage in his chest, but fear crept in alongside it. He averted his gaze, trying to collect his thoughts. Sarah, you left me no choice. Jessica told me more than you ever did. She showed me the truth. Sarah's eyes flared. The truth? You think Jessica told you the truth? She's just as much a snake as Max. Don't you see they're using you? John snapped back. And you? Haven't you used me? You hide behind your lies and call it protection. But I can't trust you anymore, Sarah. Her face suddenly shifted. Anger gave way to pain. Are you really choosing her? She asked quietly, her voice like breaking ice. John felt his chest tighten with guilt, but he didn't allow himself to falter. Yes, I'm choosing Jessica because she gives me a chance at the truth. You only give me more questions and more manipulation. Sarah froze in place, her hands trembling. She stepped closer, so close he could feel her breath. Fine, John, but remember this. She won't save you. And when you realize that, I won't be here anymore. That evening, John went to Jessica, leaving behind a house filled with silence. Her apartment was different. Here, he felt calmer, though he knew this feeling might be an illusion. I did it, he said as he entered. Jessica looked up. You broke it off with her? Yes, but now we need to act fast. Max knows I'm on your side. We have to find a way to stop him before he strikes first. Jessica smiled, and her smile was just as predatory as Sarah's. Good. I knew you'd make the right choice. Now we work together. Over the next few days, John and Jessica devised a plan. She showed him files that exposed Max's financial schemes and explained how he had used Sarah as a tool to achieve his goals. Max doesn't tolerate betrayal, she said one day. If we make him think Sarah is working against him, he'll destroy her himself. John felt uneasy. He had just left Sarah, but the thought of her becoming Max's victim stirred an unexpected sense of guilt. Are you sure this will work? He asked. Trust me, John. I know how he operates. I've had time to study his methods. The next day, John received a message from Sarah. I hope you know what you're doing. But if you think I'll just disappear, you're gravely mistaken. Her words haunted him. He couldn't shake the feeling that Sarah had her own plan and that her next move might upend everything. Sarah sat at a desk in her bedroom, surrounded by piles of papers, old records, and flash drives. Her hands trembled from tension, but she couldn't afford to stop. On her laptop screen, emails flashed, hundreds of pieces of evidence showing how Max and Jessica had manipulated John. You all thought I was just a pawn, she whispered to herself. But I'll show you who the real player is. Her phone vibrated. A new message from Max. Your time is up, Sarah. Either you do what I said, or you'll be next. Sarah just smiled. Max thought he had her under control, but in reality, she was already preparing to make a move that would turn the entire game upside down. John stood in front of Jessica's empty apartment, clutching a note in his hand. Her words left no room for doubt. She had betrayed him. She had used him just like Sarah had, and now he was completely alone. His phone vibrated in his pocket. A message from an unknown number. John, if you want the truth, come to our old house. I'm waiting. It was from Sarah. Sarah was sitting in an armchair in the living room when John finally arrived. His face was pale, his eyes tense. What do you want, Sarah? He asked, not sitting down. She looked up at him calmly. The truth, John. Do you want to know the truth? Then listen. She opened her laptop and showed him files. All of them contained information she had been collecting for years. Max's financial schemes, Jessica's emails, photos, and videos that confirmed their intrigues. Max and Jessica have been using you from the very beginning. You were nothing but a tool to them. But now I have everything to take them down. I can destroy Max. But I need your help. John felt his heart tighten. You want me to trust you again? After everything that's happened? Sarah leaned closer, her voice quieter, but filled with strength. Yes, I want you to trust me. Because if we don't join forces now, he'll destroy us both. And believe me, John, it won't be a pretty ending. A few hours later, Max was sitting in his office, staring at his monitor. A new message appeared on the screen. I know everything, Max, and I won't stay silent. I have copies of it all. Prepare for your downfall. Max smiled. She's playing to the very end. Well, Sarah, Let's see who wins. He pressed the call button and said, "Do what needs to be done. Now." John was barely breathing, pressed into a dark corner of the room. Smoke filled the space, making his eyes water. Sarah stood beside him, gripping his hand tightly. Her whisper cut through the chaos. "John, don't stop. We have to get out of here." Footsteps echoed from outside. There were many of them, firm, cold, relentless. Sarah glanced back and sighed as she looked at John. "If you trust me even a little, do what I say. Run. Find a way out and do it. I'll hold them off." John couldn't even respond. His head was filled with terrifying thoughts. But before he could say anything, the door burst open with a crash, and armed men flooded the room. Sarah pushed John forward, forcing him to run, and stepped forward herself. "Enough. I'm here. You want me? Take me." Max sat in his office, intently watching the video feed. On the screen, he saw his men storming Sarah's house. Her determination made him smile. "She thinks she can win," he muttered. His phone vibrated. A message from one of his men. "Sarah is with us." John escaped. Max paused the video and picked up the phone. "Let him run. I want to see what he does next. Sarah knows her move is the last one. Let's see if she makes the right choice." John ran through the dark alley, barely holding back the urge to turn around. Words couldn't describe the rage boiling inside him. He couldn't leave Sarah there. He couldn't let Max win this game. The phone in his pocket vibrated. It was Sarah's number. "Sarah? Is that you?" From the other end came a voice. "Hello, John. It seems you decided to leave her alone. How does it feel to know you betrayed your wife?" Max's voice was calm, but filled with an underlying threat. "What do you want, Max?" John rasped. "Simple. Come back to me. Surrender. And I'll give Sarah a chance to survive. Otherwise, well, you know what will happen." John lowered the phone, gripping it so tightly his fingers turned white. Max knew he would do it. He knew John wouldn't leave Sarah in his hands. Sarah sat in a dark room, tied to a chair. In front of her stood Max, observing her with the same calm expression she despised. "You were always clever, Sarah. Why did you decide to go against me?" She looked at him, her eyes filled with fury and disdain. "Do you think you control everything, Max? Do you think John will give in to you? Then you don't know him." Max leaned in closer. "I know him better than you do, and he'll do what I say, because he can't stand the thought of losing you." Sarah smiled, and it made Max step back. "You think John's afraid of losing me? The truth is, you're the one afraid of losing everything, Max, and I'll make sure you do." John stood before the tall doors of Max's office. The darkness of the night surrounded him, but he felt adrenaline coursing through every cell of his body. Sarah's message still glowed on his phone screen, but he couldn't afford hesitation. "I won't leave her," he muttered to himself and pushed the doors open. Max's spacious, minimalist office was lit by only a few lamps. Behind a massive desk sat Max, calm, confident, and almost bored. "And here you are," he said, lifting his head. "I knew you'd come. Where's Sarah?" John demanded sharply, his voice brimming with anger. Max smirked, like a lion eyeing its prey. "She's safe for now, but you didn't come here to ask questions. You came to decide whose side you're on." John stepped closer, his fists clenched. "I've already made my choice. You'll get nothing from me. Let her go." Max only laughed. "Oh, John, you're so naive. Do you think she deserves your trust? She knew it was a trap. She sent you here herself." John felt the ground shift beneath him. "What do you mean?" Max pressed a button on his desk, and the large screen behind him came to life. It showed a video of Sarah sitting in Max's office, talking to him. "I know John will come. He always does what's right. But I want you to let me go. He has nothing to do with our business." John froze, his breath unsteady. "She..." Max interrupted him. "She was ready to sell you out, John. Ready to trade your life for her freedom. And you still want to save her?" John took a few steps back, his mind flooded with doubt. But something was off. The Sarah in the video wasn't the woman he knew. Her eyes, her movements, it all seemed too staged. "This is a lie," he muttered, steadying his breath. "You're trying to pit us against each other, but I won't fall for it. Max's grin widened. Your choice, John. But let me tell you this. She won't come back unless you do what I say. John stepped closer to the desk, leaning toward Max. What do you want? I want you to leave all of this behind. I'll release Sarah if you sign this contract and forget everything you know. You won't go back to your life. You won't go to the police. You'll just disappear. John stared at the papers on the desk, his heart pounding so loudly it almost drowned out Max's words. But then, he noticed a small shadow behind Max. Sarah. She raised a finger to her lips, signaling John to stay silent. Sarah had been in another room when they brought her into the office, but she knew this was her chance. Max, as always, was too arrogant and had left just enough room for her to make her move. When John entered, she seized the moment, sneaking into the office and hiding behind a large shelf. Now, she had to act quickly. John watched as Sarah lunged at Max with a knife in her hand. Her movements were quick and determined, but he could see it was a desperate act. A voice screamed in his mind, "Stop her, or we're all dead." He sprang forward, grabbing Sarah's arm just as the knife was inches from Max. Her eyes, burning with fury and pain, locked onto his. "Let go, John!" she shouted, struggling to break free. "Sarah, stop. This won't fix anything," he yelled back, pulling her close to stop her from making a rash move. Max, frozen in place, watched them with interest, as though he were witnessing a play he'd been waiting to see for years. "Interesting," he finally said. "You two are actually willing to destroy each other to stop me? That's almost touching." Sarah wrenched herself free from John's grip and aimed for Max again. "I won't let you win, Max. This is the end of your game." John grabbed her again, this time more firmly. "Sarah, enough. This is exactly what he wants. Do you think he didn't anticipate this? If you do this, he wins, even if we survive." Her face was filled with despair, but she didn't lower the knife. "Then what do you suggest, John? Sit here and wait? Let him tear us apart completely?" "No," John replied, his voice growing steadier. "But the only way we win is together. If you do this now, it's over, and not the way you want." Max leaned back in his chair, observing their argument. "I have to say, this is the best show I've seen in years. You two really are entertaining. But I'm afraid time's up." He pressed a button on his desk, and the doors behind them slammed shut with a loud bang. "Now we're all here. I'm sure you'll appreciate the final act of this little game." Sarah looked at John, her eyes brimming with tears. "I was trying to save us, John. I didn't know what else to do." "I know," he said, holding her shoulders. "But we have to fight together. Otherwise, we lose." They turned to face Max, who was still smiling. "So, are you ready to surrender? Or do you have another bold but hopeless plan?" Sarah looked down at the knife in her hand, then up at Max. "I'll surrender if you let John go," she said suddenly. "Sarah, no." John shouted. "Quiet, John," she interrupted. "If this is the only way to stop him, I'll do it." Max tilted his head slightly, as if considering her proposal. "Tempting. But the problem is, I don't trust either of you. You're far too unpredictable." John watched as Sarah suddenly moved toward Max. Her movements were decisive, but there was anxiety in her eyes. He rushed forward, grabbing her wrist at the last moment. "Stop, Sarah." His voice was quiet, but filled with tension. Sarah turned to him, her face blazing with fury. "He ruined everything. If we don't stop him now, he'll win." John held her hand, forcing her to look into his eyes. "Do you think this is the way? If you do this, he wins. This is what he wants, for us to lose control." At that moment, Max, seated at his desk, began to clap slowly. "Bravo, John. You're finally starting to understand. But I'm afraid your little drama won't change anything." Sarah pulled her hand free and stepped back, her eyes filled with tears. "I was trying to fix everything. I just wanted this to end." Max tilted his head to the side, his smile growing wider. "End? Oh, Sarah, this is just the beginning. You're both part of something much bigger now. And now you have to choose. Work together or destroy each other." John stepped forward, staring directly at Max. "You think you've won, Max? You think you have everything under control?" But I know more than you think. Max raised an eyebrow, his interest evident. Do you, John? And what exactly do you know? John pulled a flash drive from his pocket, the one Jessica had given him before she disappeared. Everything. All your deals, all your connections. If you want to keep playing your game, you'll have to negotiate with us. Max leaned forward, his smile fading. You're playing with fire, John. But you don't understand. I love this game. At that moment, Sarah stepped forward and stood beside John. Maybe you do love playing, Max. But this time, we're setting the rules. Sarah and John stood together in front of Max's desk, their hearts beating as one. Max rose from his chair, his eyes gleaming, but his smile had vanished. He slowly approached them, stopping just a few steps away. Do you think your little flash drive can change anything? John, Sarah, you have no idea who you're playing with. John didn't back down. Maybe we don't know everything, but now you know this. We won't back down. Everything on that flash drive has already been handed over to the right people. Even if we don't make it out of here, you can't escape the truth. Max clenched his jaw but quickly regained his composure. Clever move. But who said I was playing against you? Maybe I just wanted to see how far you'd go. Maybe now we're partners? Sarah stepped forward, her voice turning icy. No, Max. Your game is over. We're no longer pawns in your hands. From now on, you'll play by our rules. Max laughed, but it was the laugh of a man beginning to lose control. Excellent. Then let's see how your rules hold up. But remember this, John, Sarah, there are no true winners in this game. He pressed a button again, and the office doors swung open. Go. But don't forget, I never forgive those who challenge me. Sarah and John exchanged a glance. This time, no words were needed. Their decision was clear. They would no longer let anyone manipulate their lives. As they left the office, the darkness of the night felt different, not threatening, but promising a new beginning. What do you think about the ending of this chapter? What would you have done in John and Sarah's place? Should they trust each other, or is the game far from over? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your take.